Good morning and welcome everyone as we celebrate Memorial Day. Our opening words are from William Schultz. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands.
Good morning, everyone. We are celebrating Memorial Day Memorial Day this week, and we are going to open up with hymn number 121, verses 1 and 2, We'll Build a Land. This is a wonderful hymn. Most people know it, so please sing at home along with me. We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where they bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
I'd like to drop the first stone for our joys and sorrows, for all who have served and are serving our country, this being Memorial Day. I'd like to drop a stone for my dad, who served in the Second World War in the Pacific and was one of the first medical people of the Americans to treat the Japanese after Hiroshima. And it changed him forever. A sorrow from Paula Goldman. Tom Worth, former director of the Mountain Camp and Conference Center, passed away Wednesday. Tom was Paula and Jerry Goldman's brother-in-law. And we drop a stone for Tom. A joy from Alice and Andy Reese. Katie Bollock, daughter and members of Ronnie and Wendy Bollock, was awarded her Doctor of Veterinary Medicine from the University of North Carolina this week. She is also getting married next Saturday. We consider her a, quote, selected, unquote, granddaughter, and are very proud of the young women and is very proud of the young woman that she has become. And I drop the last stone for all of us. You've heard this phrase before. We need some mercy now. Whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do the good work of this congregation. The offering will now be received online, and online you'll be able to see the link. If you wish to contribute to the church, you may do so.
We're going to be trying to have some guest musicians either with us in person or via recording over the next couple of months. You've heard a lot of me, and so we think it would be nice to have some variety. And I got together with my friend Melanie Larson this week, and she recorded a beautiful rendition of Let There Be Peace on Earth. And so we are going to hear that now while we have our offertory.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with love for one another, brothers all are we. Let me walk with my sister in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Please join me in a moment of meditation, which will be followed by silence. The reading this morning for the meditation is entitled, It is Possible to Live in Peace, and it's by Gandhi. And it's actually a responsive reading in our hymnal, but I'll just read it straight through. If someone with courage and vision can rise to lead in nonviolent action, the winter of despair can, in the twinkling of an eye, be turned into the summer of hope. It is possible to live in peace. Nonviolence is not a garment to put on and off at will. Its seat is in the heart, and it must be an inseparable part of our being. It is possible to live in peace. Nonviolence, which is a quality of the heart, cannot come by an appeal to the brain. It is a plant of slow growth, growing imperceptibly, but surely. It is possible to live in peace. If a single person achieves the highest kind of love, it will be sufficient to neutralize the hate of millions. It is possible to live in peace. If we are to reach real peace in this world, and if we are to carry on a real war against war, we shall have to begin with the children. It is possible to live in peace. The future depends on what we do in the present. It is possible to live in peace. I'd like to begin the sermon with another responsive reading. It's entitled The Young Dead Soldiers, and it's by the American poet Archibald MacLeish. The young dead soldiers do not speak. Nevertheless, they are heard in the still houses. Who has not yet heard them? They have a silence that speaks for them at night and when the clock counts. They say, "We were young, we have died. Remember us." They say, "We have done what we could, but until it is finished, it is not done." They say, "We have given our lives, but until it is finished, no one can know what our lives gave." They say, "Our deaths are not ours, they are yours. They will mean what you make them." They say, "Whether our lives and our deaths were for peace and a new hope or for nothing, we cannot say. It is you who must say this." They say, "We leave you our deaths. Give them their meaning." We were young, they say. We have died. Remember us. On an April day in 1866, the women of Columbus, Mississippi, who had known the heartbreak of war intimately, visited a local cemetery. There they cleared and decorated the graves of some 1,600 Union and Confederate soldiers. They made no distinction. between friend and foe. This was the beginning of Memorial Day. We were young. We have died. Remember us. At Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, a ridge overlooks a big open field. The Yankees occupied this ridge. Wave after wave, the rebels pressed forward across the field. Thousands fell. The ground was soaked in blood. It was truly a sacrifice of the lambs. They buried most of them up in the cemetery. Occasionally, a farmer plowing a field in Gettysburg comes across a limb or a whole body. The farmers take it and bury it again up there in the cemetery so the soldiers can be with his fallen comrades. We were young. We have died. Remember us. Steep cliffs overlook Omaha Beach of Normandy, France. The Germans occupied those cliffs, waiting in their bunkers. Wave after wave, the Americans landed on the beach. Thousands fell. Blood colored the water, soaked the sand. It was truly a sacrifice of the lambs. Our deaths are not ours, they are yours. Whether our lives and our deaths were for peace or a new hope or for nothing, we cannot say. It is you who must say this. We leave you our deaths, give them their meaning. We were young. We have died. Remember us. A daughter, her father, a veteran of the Normandy landings, makes a pilgrimage to the beaches in France. She sees the caissons still in the water, the bunkers on the cliffs, the rows of markers at the cemetery. She tells her story. When my husband Tom and I went to France, I wanted especially to visit the Normandy beaches, the site of the Allied landing in World War II. My father was part of those D-Day landings. As soon as I saw the site, I knew I was making this trip for him. Tears came. My sadness was my father and for me. I knew my dad would never come here for himself. I knew he needed to come, for this place and his experience of war had shaped the rest of his life, and so my life too, as his daughter. After I returned home, I visited my parents in New York City. I was filled with my trip and brought along all my photographs. My father and I lingered over cups of coffee as we'd done so many times. When I took out the photos, I said to him, "Dad, I went to Normandy for you. I went because I wanted to see for you. I used my eyes to see again the water, the beaches, the roads, the land, the place where you must have wondered where you'd ever return." My father was silent. I told him that while I was in Normandy, what I thought about was how young he was, that almost a half a century ago. I told him I realized he was a mere 25, the exact age of Ken, his grandson. "You were so young, Dad," I said. "Whatever were you thinking?" The room was silent. I looked up at my father. A tear had gathered at the center of his eye. It was the first tear I'd ever seen this brave man I've known almost all my life, except for the years he was away. 48 years, 2 months, 5 days after landing on the Normandy beaches, my father shed his first tear. It was all I could do. Sorry, it brings me back to my dad. It was all I could do to be silently present with him. Find the other way, said Roosevelt and Churchill. Find the other way. In New York City stands a building raised by those who emerged shaken and scared from the war that ended in 1945. The building itself, with its fluttering mantle of flags from all nations, is an icon recognized around the globe. But it is the institution and the concept underlying it which constitutes that generation's plea to their successors: find the other way. The United Nations Charter was the culmination of a process begun amidst the horrors of war by British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and American President Franklin Roosevelt. It was their vision, a permanent instrument for international collaboration to maintain peace among the countries of the world. The United Nations is in some ways an absurd being, a dream trying to behave as if it were an institution, a vision struggling to be lived out amid the tensions and the finitude of the real world. What do we expect, and what might we expect from an entity so entrusted with human hope and so hostage to human frailty? Peace, said Martin Luther King Jr., is not the absence of struggle. It is the presence of justice. This is a realization that undergirds the enormous challenge that is the work of the United Nations. It is not possible to simply prevent war. War must be prevented through the cultivation of the conditions for peace. This is to say, through health and well-being and hope for all members of the human family. This is to say, through equal justice for all. This is to say, through mutual understanding and appreciation in the embrace of diversity. If these things were easy, if they were achievable by sheer desire or force, we have done them already. That we have not suggests to me that it's harder than it seems, harder than we think intuitively that it should be. Find the other way, said Roosevelt and Churchill. Halfway around the world from the white marble building on the East River is a rock in a park in the city of Hiroshima. The rock is surrounded by flowers. It is dedicated to the memory of those who died when the first atomic bomb was dropped. Carved on the rock are these words: "Please rest in peace. The mistake will not be repeated." Japanese writer Kyoko Mori tells his story about her visit to that park. And this will be a long quote. In 1945, my father's younger brother, Tsuyoshi, lived in Hiroshima with his parents and his sister, Akiko. At his school, classes were often canceled, and the students taken to factories to make guns, bullets, and the soldiers' uniforms. Everyone had to help their country win the war. Tsuyoshi was told this. On the morning of the atomic explosion, Tsuyoshi was in a factory downtown. He lived for a day after the bombing, wandering by the river looking for help. Then he fell down from exhaustion and died. A stranger took his school cap with his name and address embroidered on it and returned it to his parents and let them know what had happened to their son. At my mother's middle school, the principal always unveiled the emperor's picture after his morning lecture. The students were supposed to close their eyes as soon as the veil was lifted. Seeing the emperor's holy likeness, they were told, would blind them. My mother kept her eyes open and found out that she did not become blind. Though my mother was able to discover the lie about the emperor's picture, she still believed in many things that later turned out not to be true. When she and her classmates went to the factories to sew the soldiers' uniforms, she believed that the Japanese soldiers were like pure white cherry blossoms falling for their country. She felt great pride in helping them carry on a war that she was taught was necessary. Every day on the radio, she heard patriotic songs and felt moved by the sacrifices people were making to win the war. She had no idea of the terrible things the Japanese troops were doing to people in Korea and China, all over Asia. She knew nothing about what had caused the war, why it was necessary. Swept away by her feelings, she did not learn to ask the right questions. She came to regret that very much. I'm not sure if we've made much progress since my mother's time. To be sure, the children now are taught that war is bad. But that isn't enough. The anti-war message now appeals only to our feelings, just as the pro-war message had appealed to my mother's feelings. Though this memorial promotes peace, it still does not encourage us to ask questions. Why did so many countries decide to resort to violence and destruction that led to the Second World War? How is each country responsible? If I were 8 or 9, a Japanese child, and remember, she is Japanese, this writer that you're listening to, I would go away from this museum thinking of my country as a helpless victim. I would not know that we too had destroyed other people in their homes. I would know little more than my mother had. I am disturbed by the vague words, "Please rest in peace. The mistake will not be repeated." What do we mean by mistake? Another world war? The atomic bomb? And whose mistake was it anyway? The saddest thing about Tsuyoshi death is that he died for the wrong cause. He was in a factory making bullets for soldiers who were killing other people somewhere else. This is not his fault in a direct way. He did not deserve to die for that. Still, he died believing in war, working his small way to continue it. If I look away from that painful fact, I would not be doing him justice. If I could carve a prayer on the memorial stone, I would say, "Please rest in peace. We understand your tragedy. You were killed in the war you believed in without thinking. We promise to ask the right questions, to think critically, to find peaceful solutions to problems, so that we will not use violence against other people, and they will not use it against us. We will not repeat your mistake. You have taught us this." Perhaps that would be less poetic and much too long to fit on a rock. Still, if Tsuyoshi were still alive, I think he would approve. Somewhere, men and women, tired and fragmented as we all are, haunted by ancient grudge and fear, push away the papers in front of them. They drop their heads into their hands and groan. And then, knowing that lives depend on what they are gathered together to do, they look up and say to one another, "Tell me again, what do you need? What do you feel? What can we agree on? Where can we start to push back the Where can we start to push back the nightmare? How can we find the other way together?" It is never easy, and it never comes with guarantees. If we measure our success against our dreams of peace, it may seem pitifully little, and it does. But it is much. It is much. Measured against the alternative, the world as it might be without the faltering steps of incremental progress, the tenuous accords, and the beginnings of common understandings. Let us hear the plea of Roosevelt and Churchill for ourselves, for our brothers and sisters around the globe, for our children, for our grandchildren, knowing that if we fail, we also fail for them. There must be always another way. The way of asking the right questions, of cooperation, the way that leads from despair to hope, from falsehood to truth, from death to life. Our deaths are not ours, they are yours. Whether our lives and our deaths were for peace and a new hope, or for nothing, we cannot say. It is you who must say this. We leave you our deaths, give them their meaning. We were young, we have died. Remember us. Amen, and blessed be.
Thank you, Reverend Don. That was a really, really moving sermon, very touching. We are going to conclude with closing hymn number 1026 out of the Teal Book, If Every Woman in the World. And again, please sing along at home. If every woman in the world had a mindset on freedom, if every woman in the world dreamed a sweet dream of peace, if every woman, every nation, young and old, each generation, hold her hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every man in the world had his mind set on freedom, if every brother stood with brother as a sweet dream of peace, if every man of every nation, young and old, each generation, held their hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every leader in every world shared a vision of freedom, if every leader in the world shared a sweet dream of peace, if every leader of every nation worked for justice and liberation, holding hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every nation in the world set the true course for freedom, if every nation raised its children in a culture of peace, and all our sons and all our daughters reached in friendship across the waters, refusing to be enemies, there would be no more war.
Our closing words are from Frederick Gillis. May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always.
I think we're going to play Down by the Riverside. We sang it a few weeks ago, but it fits so well with our theme for today. And I'm just going to play it on the piano, maybe different than when we sang it. Ooh, yeah. Have a great week, all.